Hello friends, welcome back to my studio. Hope you're well. In last week's vlog I spoke to you about some brushes and I thought I'd show you close up in more detail about what I prefer and how I use them, and yeah, all about brushes today. Well, seeing only just a selection of my brushes here in front of me, I'm starting to feel like I need to justify the purchase of all of these. So let's just scoot these out of the way for us. So specialty brushes, of course, they all come in different shapes, you know, stenciling, round head stenciling brush, very fine working brush, nice broad brush for varnishing, fan brush, filbert, and then of course you have your round and your flat brushes, and they come in a short version as well, the flats. Yeah, I won't get too much into the technical of it too much, but just to know. Oh yeah, and this is gorgeous. I've always wanted one of these. I don't paint with it much though. I haven't quite figured out how to use it. It's a really thick brush and it holds so much paint. I think I need a bigger canvas for that one. If you're interested, that's what it is. And these lovely Japanese style brushes where you can see how they're made. I was using them when I was doing encaustics and I've tried to get all the wax out. It's not quite all out. Again, not really sure how I'm meant to use it, and this is what I'm going to speak to you today about, how I use them, not necessarily how they're meant to be used. Very briefly, watercolor brushes tend to have a lot of bristles, very soft, because the idea is you want it to hold water compared to a brush designed for oil paint. Is generally a much stiffer brush than the watercolor brushes, and that's because of the nature of watercolor paint versus oil paint. The oil paint's so much thicker, and of course you need a stronger bristle to be able to hold the paint. And I just use, you can get acrylic brushes, but I just use anything really. So that I was referring to last week, that's what it is. That's this little, it's got a slightly tapered edge. Perhaps if I give you a calmer background to view this with. So it has a slightly rounded tip. There's probably a name for it, but what I have found, so I guess maybe for flowers and things you can get this little rounded edge. What I was using it a lot for, if I can get some paint on there, is it does really lovely petal marks. The other brush I used a lot for when I was doing the teacups were these tapered head brushes, because they allow you to do things like that. And the other brush was this Renoir brush. I've got a couple of different sizes, and they're almost like a watercolor head, very soft bristles. And when I said I find I haven't got as much control, it's because as I'm using it and I want to push the paint around, because it's so soft, it kind of collapses under the way I tend to use brushes. It collapses under what I'm trying to do. So that's why, you know, traditionally a brush should be held. I'll just mention that's why all the brushes have these rounded edges, because they're designed to fit nicely in your palm or just here on your hand, so they're not cutting into your hand. So technically a brush is meant to be held all the way down here. It's a little bit like a hammer. All brushes are weighted as well, so you wouldn't grip a hammer and hammer up here. You grip your hammer right up here and use the weight of the head, and that's very much how you use a brush. And of course you can break the rules as we know, and you can use a brush however you really wish. But technically speaking, this is where a brush is meant to be held and using the weight of that. And the difference comes into play with these two. These are Grey Matters brushes by Jack Richardson. They are a different size round head, but you can see this is, he makes them in a short and a long. And while I really like this size head, I've found I don't like using this brush because this length here is too short. So I went out and bought this, and I much prefer this length. You can of course attach a broom handle or a stick or anything to really give you great length, and of course the more length you have, the less control you have over the head. That's why something like this that's used for fine detail is generally a shorter brush, and yeah, you are using that very much up near the head of the brush. Something like that you can really break out and be, you know, if you want to get really free with your marks, that's something to do, is to really lengthen your stick. These are another couple of brushes. They're just a Neef, and that's got that same shape head to this little one, but in a bigger version. And this is slightly fanned, and I found I don't use them. I don't know why. They're kind of, I don't like the shape this head makes, and I've tried to use this, and yeah, it doesn't work for me. So whoops, I shouldn't have bought those. But how are you going to know until you know, you all will find your own preference with what you like to use. I bought these, stumbled across these. I hadn't heard of this brand before. They're Isabey, made in Italy, and they are a glorious brush. Very expensive. Again, you can see perhaps that I'm using these two and I'm not using this one. Again, this shape, not for me. But these are a really beautiful brush. This for square making, mark making. Now, what I have noticed is this head, I don't know if you can see the play in that, this has become a little bit loose, and I'm not sure whether it's because of how rough I am, but really something of this expense really shouldn't have done that. So yeah, quite disappointing. But this brush is beautiful, and I use it again, just get a new page. It's really lovely. This is where I get these sort of rolling, makes these really beautiful marks. Really lovely brush. And of course I can do that, it's the shape of the head that's doing it. I can do that with the Grey Matters brush as well. And then this is a liner brush, and it's because of the length of the head. It's a Neef brush, and liner brushes, as their name, they're designed to do lines as you drag them through. But what I use is this Daler Rowney brush with a very stiff, short, flat head. And I find with this, the way I, perhaps a new page again, the way I like to do, which you've seen with my mountain, I can kind of roll this. I can get a really thin, and then I can flatten it off and come really thin again with the line. I just think even if I go in a straight line, it's just a much better quality line for me than what I get with the liner brush. Of course, if that's the line you want, that's the brush you're going to need. But that's what I use for lines, and I just love what that brush can give me. And then the other brushes I use a lot, again another Daler Rowney, and that is Holbein by the look of it. These are oil brushes designed for oils, so very stiff. I treasure these brushes. I was given these from my partner in a set many years ago, and it wasn't so much about whether the brushes were of quality, but the fact that he had bought me a whole lot of brushes in a little stand was just so precious to know. It was a real big statement about him supporting my practice. So they're very special because of that reason. Unfortunately, I'm pretty brutal on them. You can see it's quite dog-eared because I tend to push with the brush as well, and you do get, you can perhaps see there the little bits that are breaking off because I tend to stab and push. You know, you're going to use a brush how you want to use a brush. The other thing you can do is get these are Montmartre brushes here in Australia. This brand, they're very El Cheapo, you know, $2 shop, reject shop type things. And you can see the amount of bristles in the head is much less for, they're kind of similar. So I wonder if you can see how many more bristles are in a quality brush compared to these. However, I've really come to really like using them. They're very coarse and they get quite dog-eared very quickly. They don't hold a lot of paint, which can be good for dry brush technique. They get this really uneven, hopefully that's picking up how uneven that edge is compared to, you know, a good quality brush. Just how that's holding its shape compared to that. But I'm finding strangely that these are as useful and as much fun as some of these really good quality, you know, very expensive type brushes. They don't hold as much paint as this. This is very fine bristles, holds a heap of paint. You can go and go and go. This you need to keep really after every mark. You need to keep dipping. They don't hold a lot of paint at all. But you can see you can get this dry brush kind of mark with them really easily. I'll just show you this. So I've only got a little bit there. You can see just with the very tip just how much paint that holds compared to these little cheapies with the same similar amount of paint on, and they're running out. So depends on, of course, what you want to do with them, what your use is, how you like to work. There is an absolute fabulous artist that I follow, and I will leave a link in the description, Brian Ruttenberg. He is, well, firstly an incredible artist, an incredible colorist, and the first thing he does when he buys a paintbrush is he snaps it about here, and all of his brushes are all snapped, and it's just, oh, it's so heartbreaking. And he explains it much better than I, but it's just something that he has to do to his brushes. And a lot of his clips, you'll see him painting and absolute scrubbing away like that with the, you know, and so there he is strangling a brush, snapped it off so he's not using this nice soft bit in his hand. Yeah, he's incredible, and he creates the most amazing landscapes of deep south of America. This is really a message, again, to be really free, break all the rules, use whatever brushes you like. I think you'll find very hard to use a watercolor brush with oils and things like that, so perhaps you can't break all of the rules, but you can certainly have a really good go at experimenting and finding what works for you. So there we are. One last tip, don't leave your brushes long term sitting in water, certainly not up into the finial part, because it will upset the glues that are in there. So I have got a how to clean your brushes video, which I can link somewhere on the screen. It's okay while you're using them to have them in water, but yeah, certainly don't store them long term in water if you want them to last. So that's it for me this week. I hope you have a lovely week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.